Thin, crispy, a little crumbly, sweet, buttery, spicy, and fruity describe these Chinese almond ginger cookies. Whether you're celebrating Lunar New Year or you just have a sugar cookie craving, these little uniquely flavored gems hit the spot. Almond cookies are popular all over China today, specifically in Hong Kong and Macau bakeries. Almond cookies were thought to have been adapted from the original walnut cookie eaten during the Ming Dynasty in the 16th century. When the Chinese began immigrating to the United States during the 1800s, they took the traditional walnut and subbed with the easily accessible almond, and thus the contemporary almond cookies were born. I'm excited to share my take on almond cookies with the addition of chopped candied ginger, traditional to Chinese cuisine, for a unique kick along with added health benefits and luck. For the ingredients, you'll need all-purpose flour, blanched almond flour, baking powder, baking soda, salt, butter, shortening, granulated sugar, an egg, almond extract, crystallized ginger, and almond slices to decorate the tops for good luck. To a sifter in a medium bowl, we're going to add 160 grams, which is 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 75 grams, which is 2/3 cup of blanched almond flour. You could use almond meal, which is ground up almonds with the skins, but I prefer the smooth texture of the fine almond flour. We're going to add 2 grams, which is half of a teaspoon of baking powder, and 2 grams, half a teaspoon of baking soda, and 1.5 grams, which is 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So you'll notice I'm using both baking powder and baking soda, and the reason for that is because baking powder is an acidic leavening agent that softens cookies, while baking soda adds to the thinness and crispiness. I like the combination of both in this particular recipe. As you can see, I've been using my spatula to break up the larger particles. Some of the almond flour is larger than will fit through a sifter, so as long as it's broken up, whatever you have left over, just go ahead and add it to your mixture, because we just need it broken up and it doesn't matter if there's a few larger particles. Okay, just give it a quick stir just to make sure everything is mixed up, and we're gonna set that aside. To a large bowl or stand mixer bowl, we're gonna add 113 grams, which is 1 stick or 1/2 cup of softened butter. If you have forgotten to soften your butter and bring it to room temperature before you start your recipe, just dice it up, stick it in the microwave for 10 seconds, and it will be soft. We're gonna add 100 grams, which is 1/2 cup of shortening. Use your paddle attachment if you're using your stand mixer or an electric mixer, and we're gonna blend both of these fats until they're combined. I like to use both butter and shortening in this recipe because butter flattens cookies, adds flavor, it caramelizes the bottoms as they bake. Shortening tenderizes and softens cookies, so these cookies will be thin and crispy, but with a smidge of softness in the center. Our butter and shortening are nice and whipped and fluffy. So to that now, we're gonna add 150 grams, which is 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. And we're going to give this a quick beat too, just to ensure that that sugar gets mixed in. Notice that sugar's nice and mixed in. Okay, now to this, we're going to add 1 large room temperature egg, white and yolk. I like to crack my egg and place it in a bowl first, just so I don't get any shells or a bad egg in my dish. And then to this, we're also going to add 1 teaspoon of almond extract. And I know this may seem like a lot of almond extract, but we want the almond flavor to shine and balance out the spicy ginger that's also going in this recipe. So once you get both of those in, then just again, give it a quick beat until combined. Notice all that beautiful fluff. So just scrape down the edges of your bowl. I'm just gonna stir in my flour mixture with a spoon. I don't want to overmix this. If you're using your stand mixer, you can mix it with a paddle attachment. Just mix it until everything is blended. To this mixture, we're going to fold in 60 grams, which is 1/2 cup of chopped crystallized ginger. And you can find crystallized ginger on almost any grocery store these days. If you can't find it, you can always leave it out. But I love the candied ginger to this because it adds spice to this recipe, and it also adds a little bit extra crunch, little texture. And hey, ginger is healthy and good for you, right? Gotta get something good out of this cookie. Ginger is traditional in Chinese and Indian cuisine. It is thought to bring good luck, fortune and ward off negative energy. We don't want any of that, do we? What a great way to begin the new year, right? Once you get your crystallized ginger folded in, then we're gonna cover the dough and place it in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes. We want the butter to firm up so that it makes it easy to roll into balls and shape and then to roll into sugar. You could leave this in the fridge for up to a couple of days. So you can make this ahead of time. Then all you have to do is shape them into balls and then bake them. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. You're gonna line 2 baking sheets with parchment paper or silicone mats. To a small bowl, you're gonna add about 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. And I'm actually using a coarser ground sugar for this than what I did to put in the recipe, but it doesn't matter. You can use any granulated sugar that you have. It doesn't have to be super fine, it doesn't have to be super coarse. Go ahead and remove your dough from the fridge. Now these cookies are going to spread quite a bit. So if you don't want your cookies to be odd shaped on the ends, take a little bit of dough, a batter, and just place a mark on the corner of your baking pan, and then press down on the parchment paper. The parchment paper will sit flush with the pan so that you don't have it popping up on the edges, and it'll prevent your cookies from curling up and being the shape of the edge of your pan. So notice how that sticks just like that. Okay, you're gonna need some kind of a cookie scoop or spoon. I'm using a 1.5 inch cookie scoop, and I like the size of that for these cookies, and that'll give us about 40 cookies from this batch. And then because our dough has firmed up because it's been in the refrigerator, it's gonna be easy to roll in our hands and then drop in the sugar and then roll in the sugar. And then you just place that on your pan. They need to be about 2 inches apart because they're going to spread and because they're thin, crispy cookies. So we want to make sure we give them that space. So then you just sort of make an assembly line. You've got your dough. You're just rolling into balls, rolling it in the sugar, then placing it on the cookie sheet. I'm going to get about 9 cookies on a cookie sheet just because I want to make sure there's space. One thing I like about these cookies is if you look at the dough, you can really see all of the crystallized ginger in there. It's nice. It adds a little texture, a little bit of fruitiness to a otherwise simple sugar cookie. Although you can use a spoon, I like using a cookie scoop because you can get them all the exact same size every time, assuming that you scrape off that cookie scoop where you have the flat bottom and the round top when you release it from the cookie scoop, and you're gonna get the exact same size balls every time. Once you've filled a tray with your cookies, you're gonna need about 1/4 cup of almond slices, and I just put them in a bowl. You're gonna place an almond slice or a couple, it's up to you. If you've got a really pretty almond slice that's by itself, you could put one on there. If you've got a bunch of small ones, you could double up, add a few more, just to give it a little extra crunch, like that. Then just press the almond slice or slices down on the top, like so. So the almond that you see we're placing on top here is supposed to represent good luck for the new year. So that is why we're doing it. If you got a lot of little pieces, maybe that means extra good luck, huh? Okay, our baking sheet is filled with as many cookies as we need on it. Once a baking sheet is filled, you're gonna place them in the oven, and we're gonna bake 10 to 11 minutes or until lightly browned just on the edges. We're gonna go ahead and fill another cookie sheet and place that with the cookie batter in the fridge to keep the dough firm until the others come out and we can remove them from that cookie sheet and place the other batch in. So we wanna make sure the dough stays cold. So whenever you're not messing with the dough, put it in the fridge, whether it's the cookies on the cookie sheet or dough in the bowl. Our first batch of cookies right out of the oven, they're puffy when you first take them out, and then they start to settle down and deflate once they cool. We're gonna let these cool in their pan for 2 minutes, then we'll remove them and place them on a cooling rack. And then we will repeat with the other dough and cookie sheet and all that. Keep the process going. Our cookies are still warm, but we're gonna go ahead and remove them after a couple of minutes just because we don't want them to fall apart when we lift them up. They're thin. Now notice this cookie here. I had a little bit too close to the edge, and notice it's not as pretty round as it could be. So if you're afraid of that happening, then you could do maybe 2 cookies and get 6 on a pan. For the most part, they should be nice and round. Now we can fill this pan up with other cookie dough. These cookies are lightly brown around the edges and on the bottom. The tops are pale from the white sugar, and the bottoms are dark and caramelized from the butter and the sugar. The almonds are securely in place and baked in the top so they don't fall off. So let's look in the center and listen for that crisp. It is a crispy cookie. It's not snappy, it's not crunchy, but it's just thin and crispy. So you can tell that it broke pretty easily, it didn't crumble. If you want a crunchier cookie, let them bake for another minute. The thin, crispy exterior is a result of the butter and baking soda. And notice how the center is a little bit soft. I can pull it away a little bit. The soft center is due to the shortening and the baking powder. And then of course you can spot the ginger. That little bubble there is the ginger. Let's see if we can take a peek at that. There it is. And you can spot the ginger at the bottoms of some of these. And of course, the bumps on the top are going to be the ginger pieces. Store cooled cookies in a sealed container at room temperature for up to a week or in the freezer for several months. They are best hot out of the oven, but just as good days later. As the cookies sit at room temperature, they begin to dry out, becoming a little crumbly. Everyone has their own preferred cookie texture preference. I tend to prefer a little softer cookie. So for this recipe, I created something that could easily satisfy both soft cookie preferences and crunchy cookie preferences. It's sort of somewhere in the middle. National Chinese Almond Cookie Day is April 9th this year. So make a batch now for luck and make another later to celebrate its special day. Keep in mind, once you make a batch, you'll want to make another very soon. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, go bake the world.